Yeah, I think he came in to early vote.
Oh, cool. Oh, was last week, we could have voted till now, he's gonna.
No, starts Monday, but if you early vote or
Apply
whatever
for
that's
it.
called, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay,
Yeah.
guys, we're gonna open up today's meeting. This is the Dayton Zoning Board of Appeals, Wednesday, October 19th. We're meeting in the planning board room because they are taking our space for this evening because of an overflow crowd. Before we start, I want to introduce the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. On my right is Zachary Karen, myself, Peter Karen. Going to my far left is Jason Quinn. Sitting next to him, why am I drawing a blank?
Greg Logan.
Greg Logan. Bob Adams is missing tonight, and Ken Pacheco is sitting here to my immediate left. We had hoped to have Bob Adams chair tonight, but he's somewhere. We have no idea. It's a very short evening, and the very first case that we have is Mr. Souza from Maple Street for a solar panel that he wants to put. But apparently, we were all informed, well, I certainly was, that at some point today, Mr. Souza, I was told you weren't 100% prepared.
No, we don't have the plot plan.
You don't have the plot plans. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually gonna open the hearing. And because you don't have, and you're not ready, that's fine. Happens all the time, so don't feel like, we're actually gonna open the hearing. We're going to assign 3 members to hear your case. Because even though there's actually 5 of us sitting up here this evening, only 3 are actually gonna cast a vote. And the vote does have to be unanimous. All 3 of the voting members are gonna have to be in unison, whether it be for or against. And if it doesn't go your way, I'll explain later on. If it goes your way, I'll explain that part too. But since you do not have anything, I'm gonna ask Ken Pacheco, sitting to my left,
I'll pick
to
3 voting members.
three voting members, please.
Okay, it's gonna be Jason Quinn, Greg Logan, and Zach Karen.
So, gentlemen, this case now is going to be continued, but before I ask for a motion in a second on that, Mr. Souza, the floor is yours. Would you like to talk about it at all?
Sure, I can.
Okay, why don't you come on up and tell them what you have.
Sorry, do we have to read the public hearing?
Yes, I'm sorry, please, Zach. Mr. Souza, before you start, Zach's gonna read the public hearing
This
notice.
is the notice of public hearing for the Town of Dayton Zoning Board of Appeals. Notice is hereby given that the Dayton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, October 19th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in Dayton Town Hall, lower level, and then it gives the address on the application for Kenneth Souza for a property located at 1909 Maple Street, shown on Assessor's Map Map 7, lot number 66, for a special permit to allow a ground-mounted solar array pursuant to sections 4600, 5300, and 5400 of the Town of Dayton zoning laws, case number 1016, and then it's addressed by Rosalind Grossi, the secretary and the clerk.
Okay, at this time, I'm gonna ask Bob Adams to take over. Bob, nothing happened. So, the only thing that happened, and I think you might be aware of this already, is Mr. Souza is not ready this evening, so,
They don't have the plot.
he doesn't have a plot plan.
We appointed members already.
Yes, we
Jason,
did.
me, and Zach.
I have just a question, is this Maple Street any location near you, Peter, at all?
No, not at all.
It's on Maple Street,
Who are the members?
1909. Jason, me, and Zach.
Jason,
Yeah.
what's the last name?
Quinn.
Sorry.
Right here, signs, see, they all got signs. We got signs.
Your name is.
Make sure you spell the last name right.
I'm sorry, I'm late, we all thought it was 7:30, for whatever reason. Are we changing to 7 o'clock now?
You change it for 1.
Okay, well, we haven't been here in 2 months.
4 o'clock
Okay.
change, Bob.
You guys,
Yeah, don't forget November 6th, we change the clock.
okay. And, some guys will do anything to get in the front page.
Run the autograph?
No, they weren't on you. I thought you'd have 27 copies of it.
30, but I have a big family. So, Mr.
All
Souza,
right,
you want to,
yeah. Yes, I'm just putting a solar array for my own house, it's a personal use, not, one of those huge solar arrays that you see around. And, I live on, Maple Street, like I said, my house is 225 feet off the road. And, it's going alongside of my solar panels. The solar panels, I mean, are going alongside of my house. What it is, it's mounted on 2 poles, okay, and 2 8-inch poles, 8-inch steel poles, and it has a framework on it that's tiltable so that you can bring it down in the wintertime and bring it back up again in the summertime. It's a manual hand crank type thing that you crank it up and crank it down, so you can do it for the different types of the seasons. So I can get a little bit more efficiency out because there's trees all around my house. There's huge oaks and 75, 80 feet tall, so, there's some huge trees all around. No one can see it from the road, no one can see it from their house even, where the location's gonna be. So it's completely isolated from any of that stuff. Now, what I'm here today asking for a continuance because they don't have the plot plan ready. The engineer has already looked at the property and everything, but he hasn't surveyed it all and got it all down and stamped it and all that good stuff that you guys have to have. That's about it, unless you guys have any questions.
I have a question, so, I don't know how much land you got there, but you're not within 15 feet of your boundaries.
Oh, no, it's about 30 feet from the side boundary and about 40 feet from the rear boundary.
And it's not on your septic system or near your leaching field or anything like that?
No.
Engineer's gonna design a plan, you're gonna have someone install this and stuff.
I'm not gonna install it, a solar company's gonna
Right.
install it. Southern Light Solar is the name of the company that will install it.
And you have an engineer doing the design.
Yeah, he's already done the design and everything.
Just wanna do a continuance now, that's right.
I don't know if there's any other
Well,
questions.
I have yeah,
Bob,
I'm
if you
just
wanna
doing
go,
it.
up and down the table, if anybody has questions now, before we,
Well, there isn't any abutters here, I don't see.
No, I'm sure none of them, I've talked to every one of my abutters, except for the town of Berkeley, the town of Swansea, the town of Somerset.
No, when we listen to it all, I might have a question then.
Yeah, he needs to sign an extension, that's already happened?
Yes, that's on the front page, like the cover of that green
Yep,
folder,
picture
is
of
that
it.
extension form that'll get us through to the next.
Next meeting is in November 16th.
November 16th. Bob, I have, some,
60.
some questions before we, continue this. At the, last, meeting for the Board of Health, I, was asked to come early to meet Mr. Souza. One of the things that, this was about, 7:15, I guess. And, we met here, it wasn't a public hearing, it was just, he wanted some advice. And, one of the things that he had asked me was, what was the possibility of putting this on the fast track, trying to get it done prior to the winter setting in. And at that time, I explained to him that probably the earliest we could get him some kind of written permission would be the beginning of December. Basically, we'd be shying maybe 2 weeks off the project if we follow the proper steps that we always do, which is site visit, vote, ask for a written decision, and then get that written decision and signed. I explained to him how he could conceivably start a little bit earlier because of the appeal period. He could talk to the building inspector, make sure, want to roll
I've
the
already
dice.
filled out the paperwork for
Fill
that.
out all the paperwork ahead of time, assuming nobody was going to appeal, so he could save himself a little bit of time. Of course, this was all prior to, assuming we were gonna have the proper paperwork
Paperwork
tonight.
today, yes.
So, what I saw that evening and what we talked about is, yes, indeed, there's no septic system to worry about. There's nothing to worry about. It's probably one of the very few solar systems that we're gonna see for quite some time, where it probably doesn't even require a site visit, because his land is vast, it is so far away from the road, our typical reasons for going is to, make sure no butter is gonna be impacted by this, and I can tell you, there is no butter that's gonna be impacted by it at all. So,
I
we
mean,
might be able to save some time for him by not having to schedule a site visit. Again, not stepping on your toes, I'm just letting you know what we discussed.
But if you guys wanna come down and do a site visit anytime, I'll show you where it's gonna go.
Right,
I mean,
well, that
I
was
got
the
no
other thing that
problem.
he had offered, is to have you guys go down individually, if that was the
Or
case, it
whatever was
wouldn't have
convenient
to
for any
be,
one of you, I just wanna get this
a
done.
meeting.
The engineer or the building, you've contacted the building inspector, you've applied to us, and you've got an engineer plan. I mean, if you're off the boundaries, you know,
Yeah.
and you have plenty of land and there's no butters, I don't see a problem moving it on a fast track.
My property
However
is
you-
250
Well,
feet wide.
putting on the fast track means,
He's taking all the risk.
No,
He is, though, but if it
well-
doesn't happen.
He's taking a risk. Putting it on the fast track, the risk that he takes is, the only thing he can do is the appeal period.
Right.
Putting it on the fast track for us is asking Marguerite to
Right. Sign it all.
do it ahead of time, instead of taking the month that she takes to write it, which she typically does, say, Marguerite, as a favor, can you do this ASAP? We come in, we take a vote, and then each member who's, these voting members come in and actually sign it. That's putting it on the fast track. The risk that you're referring to is, once it's signed,
There's an
doing
appeal
it
period.
without waiting for an appeal.
Right.
But we can't move forward, so, Bob.
Who would appeal it? I mean, if it's not my abutters, who would appeal it?
That'd be pretty much it.
Chances are nobody, and
They would be here today.
and I gotta tell you, Bob, Ken and myself have been on here for almost 20 years, and I don't think we've seen anybody appeal very many projects. But the bottom line is, we still have to have certain things in front of us.
Right, right.
So, yeah, no, this most likely won't be an appeal. Bob, I think two things have to happen. You need a receipt from the Gazette, if we haven't gotten that yet.
Not yet.
So, we would need that receipt
I will
before,
get that.
you can bring
I'll
that
go down there
anytime.
tomorrow. I'll go down there tomorrow.
You're here all the time, you can bring it anytime. Then Bob, your next step would be to ask for, one of the members who are the voting members to call, for a motion, and it's gotta be seconded.
Whoever's voting, the voting members, you wanna call for a motion to continue this to, was it November 16th, you said?
Correct.
Yep.
November 16th?
I'll make a motion that we continue acting case 1016 to November 16th.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Souza, you have to sign the extension.
Okay. Yeah?
So I missed part of that, sorry. Are we doing a site visit or an individual, or everybody thinks
Well,
it's?
my gut feeling is, there's no reason to have a site visit as a group. You're talking, if each individual member would like to go and visit Mr. Souza on their own time,
Yeah.
unless Bob feels,
I'm gonna do a drive-by, if I can't see yourselves visible from the street.
That's, I was thinking the same thing, if I can drive by, yeah.
We don't have all, how much, like, one of the questions, how much land do you own there?
It's about a little less than an acre and a half.
Okay, but you said you're 250 feet from the road.
Yeah. Well, about 225 feet from the road. And it's going alongside my house.
We
so-
might get to see a plan and stuff.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
I'm full, but
We'll get that.
I'm familiar with Maple Street. I was there a couple of times this week already.
Oh.
It's hunting season.
Ah. Well, that's, like I said, there's plenty of coyotes and plenty of deer behind my house. And turkeys go off.
I own property on Wheeler Street, so it's not.
Although the turkey population will probably get cut down by the coyotes. Recently, I've seen them turkeys eaten to hell by the coyotes.
I don't think there's any chance of coyotes touching the turkey population.
I know.
Unless they get their
They're
eggs,
everywhere.
once they're grown, the coyote will never catch them.
Oh, they got a couple of big ones around my house. They got them. They sneak up on them at night.
They're in trees.
I know. I know, that's what they usually do, but they was laying, must have been laying on the ground.
We got Dayton, don't
Yeah,
forget
this,
Dayton
we can
turkeys.
probably continue.
Mr. Souza, you're all set.
look at
We'll
the-
continue this conversation about the
Thank you.
turkeys.
It's probably a fishing cabin,
Okay,
in the
site-
coyote.
Site plan as soon as you got it, and the
Yeah.
invoice.
Invoice and site plan.
What do we have next? I didn't-
Believe me,
I
believe me, I get it to you as quick as I can.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, and like I said, anybody wants to come down, see the thing.
Thank you, sir.
Sounds good.
Okay, we're gonna review and discuss our fees.
Thank you, Susan. Sorry, Ken.
Just a question, you've obviously put a lot of time into this stuff. What is the percentage of increase? Is it down to anything like that compared to what it was?
This,
I think the variance of special permit's like 150% increase.
Right.
You're just roughly, right?
what you're seeing here is what we, actually spoke about a year ago.
Yeah, we did.
We, there was some question, whether we officially took a vote on it or not. So that's what we're going to do.
I thought we had some type of.
I thought so too.
I did.
But there seems to be, well, let me tell you, if you don't mind, what's happened. As you know, we have an accountant that is hired by the selectmen. She's not voted in, she's a town employee. As a matter of fact, she doesn't even live in town. And there seems to be some kind of friction with the accountant's office in a few different departments here in town. One of them being the Board of Appeals. And for whatever reason, she has seemed to has an opinion about our fee schedule, even though she has no authority or anything over our fee schedule. Clearly, Mass law says we can determine what our fee schedule is, and you just vote on it, and it is what it is.
We
Now,
adopted the rule.
for all these years, since I've been around, and I'm gonna assume much longer before that, because I've never heard of anything about it, we were charging, the fees went up minuscule, but they were always put into a cash account used for the town, to like the regular savings account, checking account, whatever you wanna refer to it as. And then what had happened was, we would charge the applicant in front of us, up until a year ago, I think $350 for an application fee. They would come in, they'd pay the $350, they would give Roz a check made out to US Postal Service, for the abutters mailings, and then they would be responsible for going to the Taunton Gazette, having it posted, and they would pay the Taunton Gazette, which is why we have always asked for the receipt, because if they don't pay, the Gazette bills the town. When Joe Pacheco was the chairman, I was a little concerned about that process, because Marguerite Mitchell, our attorney for the Zoning Board of Appeals, through Gay and Gay, has always written our decisions. We don't have a town attorney on staff that you can just hand to their office someday and say, give it back to us. So they charge us when they write these decisions. Very professional, very technical, and very detail-oriented decisions. Now, here's the problem. Those decisions can range anywhere from $500 to $1,200, depending upon how long it takes Marguerite to write it, the research that's involved, the fact that it goes to Gay and Gay's office, then back to us. If she has a conversation with any one of us, she has to read the minutes of the meeting that Roz sends her. And if there is a positive approval of for the applicant, there's never been a question about the applicant paying the bill. Although they've been a little late sometimes in paying this bill, they usually, without much fanfare, pay the $800 that we might submit to them after the decision is written. What we do have a problem with is when the decision is negative. Then Marguerite's writes the decision, then we have to call the applicant up and say, well, not only did we not approve you, you owe us $800
Yeah.
to formally tell you we didn't approve you. And now there has been more cases of people not paying when the case is denied. And you're gonna see more cases being not denied in the future. More cases denied in the future. As land gets scarce and people try to do different things with their land, we're gonna get some far out 15-foot frontages, things like that. So I presented to you guys last August a case where instead of us billing these people separately, we would just raise the fee. And that's why we came up with the $750. I actually wanted it at $800. I don't know if you guys remember,
Yeah.
but we talked about it and we decided it was gonna be $750.
Peter, why hasn't it been in the past, until you mentioned it just now, I wasn't aware that these fees didn't go into the fund that would, like, be generated for the cost of operating the zoning board of appeals like it does with the planning board. Planning board gets their permit
Why don't you
applications.
let,
Yep.
Peter get in?
So, okay, I'm gonna explain it in a second, Bob. So anyway, we went up to $750, so now when somebody comes in, we charge them $750 to sit in front of the board. And that $750 includes the written decision from Marguerite. Prior to us raising this to $750, that $325, $350 was always put into the general fund, and the town paid its bills. When we were given the $700, it was then put into our professional and technical fees to offset the fees from Marguerite, because our budget has a line for professional and technical, and that's where we pay Marguerite out of. So the planning board has a different way of doing it. They have a revolving account, almost like the library does. Well, no, just like the library, where if you pay into the planning board for X amount of dollars, they pay out from that revolving account, because they pay for an engineer and written decisions just like we do. Bob, I don't know why it was never set up as a revolving account. Well, several months ago, when we were hit with our first, I'm not gonna pay for this negative review, I asked the accountant, well, now we as a zoning board have to pay this bill for Marguerite from our professional and technical. I never budgeted enough for professional and technical fees, assuming that we were gonna have to delete the funding. And I started asking questions, why can't we have a revolving account? That way it's always replenished by the applicant, and this should not be an issue. Well, the accountant didn't have an issue with that. What she did have an issue with was she still wanted the $350 we originally charged to go into general funding. In my opinion was, why does any of our fees collected go into general funding? It all, just like the planning board, should go
There had to be an
into,
oversight at some point.
should go into professional and technical. So now a discrepancy has come up where she's pushing back at Roz, wants to see, where's the minutes of the meeting that you guys voted on? What gives you the right to establish this? How did you justify, how did you come about this $750? Well, it's none of her business. It's not her job, it's not in her job description.
But it says we have the right to adopt rules, regulations.
We do, but she's putting her business in a place that she has no authority to.
We just haven't done this, but we
correct.
do have the
The
authority to do
question,
it.
how come we couldn't put a lien on the person's home?
You
If
can.
the town takes priority over any other person on it,
Absolutely, when the town puts a lien on, there's
doesn't mean you're gonna get it
fees,
right away.
there's fees involved. And not only that, a lien is only valid for certain amounts of times. Most of the time, the longest you can ever go is 20 years. The problem is that is who's going to monitor it? Putting a lien on somebody's house for $800 doesn't make economical sense for the town, and not for the fees involved. And sometimes the corporations, it's not an avenue that I wanna pursue with Marguerite, spending time with her on the phone, going about with liens, unless you guys choose that.
You're
I.
saying on the back, what's behind us, that's not paid. Going forward, what we're about to do is gonna take care of that issue.
Right, well, this is what we've been
Yes,
going forward for the
yes.
last, year. At this special town meeting that's coming up, put on that the zoning board of appeals wanted a revolving account that we could put our funds in. This way we don't deplete professional and technical, because quite quickly, that will be depleted, and then we're gonna have to go to a special town meeting and then ask for funds
Yeah.
because this account's gonna be underfunded. And,
I don't
we
think
were
the
taken
account-
off, the,
We were taken off.
we were taken off
By who?
by the selectmen.
But this thing, like what you're talking about, the accountant asking for this information, they can't base their budget on what there's no telling how many permits we're up to 16 this year. I've seen 16 in 1 month at other times. You know, in the course of the year, they can't base what our.
You can't base on, history. The other thing is, there are, more solar projects coming in before us. There are going to be numerous, and I don't wanna exaggerate the number, but certainly, at the, probably right after January, you're gonna see numerous, insufficient frontages coming in from the phone calls that I've been, confronted with, people asking. So, people are trying to do unique things with their property as either times get tight, or again, as land gets a little bit more scarce. I had no idea why the selectmen took us off the special town meeting, because there's absolutely no reason why we can't be self-funding. Other than, we give them our money that we take in fees to spend the way they want, and then we have to ask at the annual town meeting through budget to fund the professional and technical, which I did, and the finance committee cut a certain amount off of it. And, so you have a finance committee that cuts funds without doing history. You have the selectmen just taking us off for what I don't know why, not even the courtesy of a phone call. My gut is.
I got a phone call,
Oh,
I
as
got
to
a
why it was
phone
taken
call.
off?
Not why, that it was gonna be taken
Oh,
off.
that was gonna be taken off.
can't
My
understand
my
it.
gut
There isn't
is
much
it was
money there.
taken off because they wanted the funds, as much
Yeah,
funds
yeah.
as they could for the police station.
Mhm.
So, by voting this tonight, we're not changing any numbers. We're just voting that this is our official, fee schedule. What we will have to discuss is, I'm going to ask you tonight, I'm gonna ask you, to allow you to write me one letter to the selectmen, and then Ross is gonna ask you to,
Peter, are
for
we
something
putting
else.
the cart before the horse here? It's just, I don't have a problem with the amounts of this or anything, but if we go and adopt this amount, and when we don't establish a revolving fund, it wouldn't be to the benefit of the board, it would be to the benefit of the general fund.
The town will be
Well,
getting
that's
more
what's
money.
happening right now. What we're seeing is, professional and technical fees is dropping substantially.
My point is that by adopting this amount and starting charging, this would make them as a, well, gee, this is more money that we have now
So
going into
not
our
to the
general.
revolving account.
That's
We-
what I was
we-
wondering.
Not to
We've been
establish
doing
a
this for
role.
the last year though.
These amounts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing changed.
Right.
It's just that somehow we don't know, there's a discrepancy whether we took an official vote or not. And, I thought we did.
remember we did.
I thought we did too.
Uh,
I remember we had a good discussion, we
Yeah.
voted to.
We had a long discussion, we
Well-
voted on the fees for the variance and the, special permits. I don't believe, and I've looked at minutes, I don't believe we actually took it, we had a long conversation, and we all agreed, to be quite
Right.
honest,
It
Well,
was
the
for
$1,500
future,
for-
what was already in